Hi everyone, here I have volume 75 of One Piece titled My Repayment. On the front cover we have Luffy, Zoro, Trafalgar Law, Koala, Sabo. We also have Kairos, Fujitora, Pika, and behind all of them we see this kind of cage-like thing. We'll know more about this in this actual volume. The side, back. Let's have a look what's underneath this time. Right, so it's basically the same as the jacket cover, however there's a slight difference. If you notice here, Koala's goggles seem normal, but here the goggles have Panda Man in each of them. The face of Panda Man. Take this off. It's back. So this volume covers chapter 743 to chapter 752. Towards the end of the last volume, Usopp managed to scare the wits out of Sugar. If you remember, Sugar is an officer in Doflamingo's family or army, and she had the ability to turn people into toys, and by doing so, erasing their existence from the memories of everyone. So this carries on, chapter 743. Like I said, Usopp manages to shock her so much with his expressions from the last chapter that she falls unconscious from shock herself. As a result, the toys transform back to their original forms. So that consists of ex-soldiers of King Riku, people from other countries, even royalty, world government officials, marines, pirates, I've already said regular people, but also wild animals as we see here. Because these toys revert back to their original forms, everyone who had lost memories of them, who had forgotten they existed, suddenly remembered. So everyone started to remember their friends and family lost to Sugar. Of course, this causes a huge commotion or turmoil in Dressrosa, and fights begin, and etc. Back here at the palace, Pika, who was fighting Zoro, has suddenly disappeared. This is obviously a result of Sugar losing consciousness and causing a huge problem for Doflamingo. As you can see here in the top left corner, Doflamingo does seem really angry. Of course, this is a huge victory for the revolution or resistance or rebel against Doflamingo. And at this instance we see the Thunder Soldier, who's now transformed back into his original form, Kairos. Heads towards Doflamingo and decapitates him. I'm sure many readers at this point thought, wow, Doflamingo is pretty weak if he lost to Kairos. Of course, Kairos is the strongest warrior in Dressrosa. I'm sure many readers thought this can't be the end for Doflamingo. It's so sudden. his head rolls on the floor, and the Buffalo and Baby 5 are screaming Waka, which means young lord or young master. And it does seem that Doflamingo has been killed off by Kairos. Back at the Colosseum, Lucy, who of course many people have guessed by now is actually Sabo, is destroying the floor of the Corridor Colosseum. Like so. And here, according to Koala, Lucy is destroying the floor of the Colosseum in order to reach the basement, which is in fact the underground port, or the factory where Sugar and Treble, Usopp, Robin, the Tontata army are currently at. Moving on to chapter 744. During the destruction of the Colosseum by Lucy, Lucy manages to get on top of the number 1 fighting fish, rips open the chest, and devours the Mera Mera no Mi. Now he has Ace's ability, and he uses one of Ace's techniques, he can, to help destroy the floor of the Colosseum, as I said before, to reach the underground port. Or the factory. See, it's right here in this small diagram. Here is the Colosseum, so he's destroying it in order to reach the factory and the underground port. Moving back to the Colosseum, the dwarves are carrying Usopp, who's been badly hurt. Robin is trying to defend them. At this moment here, this giant, I think his name was Hajudan, he picks up Usopp and he shows him to the other reverted people. And at that moment, the ceiling breaks and everyone says that Usopp is a kind of God, is a messenger of God, he is blessed, he is their savior. And they all become his followers. He then orders them to destroy the factory and save the dwarves. Of course, that's not what he actually said, because he's been hurt so badly, only a couple of words managed to get out. And those words happen to be destroy the factory and save the dwarves. And so they do. Lucy, Rebecca, Bartholomew, Koala, they all reach the underground trade port. And it is now that Lucy's true identity is revealed, as we already guessed, is Sabo. But what we didn't know is that he is actually the chief officer of the Revolutionary Army. And they came to Dressrosa to investigate the sale of illegal weapons. So Sabo is alive, amazing. We didn't see Sabo die in the flashbacks, we did see an explosion while he was on board. In no way did we confirm that Sabo did die all those years ago. Of course, here you can see he's got a scar to the left side of his face, which probably indicates that he was on a boat during the explosions. He got burnt, but he did survive. He did go out into the world, and this is how he is now and what he's become. Moving on. Back at the palace, Kairos, after decapitating Doflamingo, easily defeats Buffalo, as we see here. Kairos is pretty strong. The one-leg soldier is very impressive in his original form. After defeating Buffalo, he manages to free King Riku. Luffy calls out to Law, and Law tells Luffy that the alliance is over, but Luffy denies it and tries to free him, as you see right here. At this point, Pika arrives. And we see here on this page that Doflamingo is not really dead, as his decapitated head is speaking. And he tells Law that he's going to implement a plan known as the birdcage. That takes us on to chapter 745. Now we make our way back to the Smile Factory. Diamante and Treble are guarding the entrance to the factory. Now that the underground trade port has been revealed, these two executive officers are now protecting the most important thing there, the Smile Factory. If you remember, this is the place where some of the enslaved Tontata tribe are being forced to create artificial devil fruits. And these devil fruits are being sold by Joker to Kaido. On this page we see that Robin and Koala are indeed acquainted. If you remember, during the time skip, Robin did spend time with the Revolutionary Army, so this is probably how they met. Here we have Kinemon and the dwarves that were with Kairos are seen here leaving the palace. And Zoro ends up getting lost while trying to locate Pika and has somehow strayed to the palace's garden rooftop. Now back to Doflamingo. And the Doflamingo that was decapitated by Kairos is actually revealed to be only a copy made of string. At this point, Luffy has a brief fight with Doflamingo. But this fight is interrupted by Pika, who throws Luffy, Viola, Kairos, Law, and King Riku out of the palace. Like so. At this point, Doflamingo activates his bird cage. And basically sends these strong, sharp strings all around Dressrosa, encaging it in a bird-like cage. However, things don't just end there. Pika then, using his ability, rearranges Dressrosa. The Smile Factory, which is a great asset of Doflamingo, is moved to the surface. The palace is moved to the top of the flower field. And this is the new Dressrosa now. And on top of all this, Doflamingo uses another ability, his parasite ability, which is latch onto random people so that he can use these people to attack indiscriminately in the general population. And if those three things weren't enough, Doflamingo announces to the whole of Dressrosa that he's going to have a game where everyone in Dressrosa has to play this survival game. And the game only ends when someone either takes Doflamingo's head or brings him the head of everyone he's about to name. That takes us to chapter 746. So as you would expect, there is complete and utter chaos in Dressrosa, with people killing each other, not having control of their own bodies, being trapped in this bird cage, being in a Dressrosa they don't recognise, and having to play the survival game. Yes, I'm sure everyone would be in a state of panic. So this is where Kinemon, who we saw earlier running off from the palace with dwarves, he's suddenly turned up here with Usopp and Robin in the underground port, and he's discarded his Doflamingo's disguise. If you remember, Kinemon's objective, his main objective, is to find and rescue his friend Kanjuro. Yeah, that's about it. Right, now here, Doflamingo explains his hit list. Each head is worth a certain number of stars, and with each star worth 100 million Beri. Here we are. We have Rebecca, Robin, Kinemon, Viola, and Frankie, each worth 1 star, which is 100 million Beri. So if the people kill them, bring their heads to Doflamingo, that is what they will receive. Kairos and Zoro each have 2 stars. So, obviously, 200 million Beri. Sabo, Luffy, Law, and King Riku each have 3 stars. So 300 million Beri. When you think about it, this is quite a clever tactic by Doflamingo. Everything is in chaos. So he wants to use the people of Dressrosa, not only them, but also everyone that he had converted into toys, in order to kill all these named people. Of course, at this point, Usopp says, "Thank God I'm not on this list." However, he names Usopp, God Usopp, worth 5 stars, so 500 million Beri. And at that point, all those who claim to be Usopp's followers suddenly have belly in their eyes, and they want Usopp's head. With all this going on in Dressrosa, the people and citizens of Dressrosa suddenly realise that King Riku is actually innocent. Everything that happened before was in fact Doflamingo. Here we go back to Luffy, who's been thrown out of the palace along with Viola, King Riku, Zoro, Trafalgar Law, and Kairos. They're just discussing a few things, and Kairos decides to separate from their group. Law claims that if they take out Doflamingo, Kaido is likely to turn his wrath to Luffy and Law instead. Of course, Luffy can't just stand by and let Doflamingo get away, even if it means bringing the wrath of a Yonko upon him. So he takes Zoro and Law with him and proceed towards Doflamingo once again. That takes us to chapter 747. The Colosseum fighters who were in the underground port have escaped to the surface and of course are adding more chaos on the already suffering Dressrosa. Manyard, who we see here, having regained consciousness, he reveals to Fujitora, right here, everything about Doflamingo's underworld dealing as a joker. Here we see that Koala is carrying on with her investigation into the underground port, trying to find more clues, more information about how Doflamingo has managed to pull all this off. Now back to Doflamingo and his officers who have gathered with him at the Royal Palace. They are discussing everything that is going on and how to deal with it. And here we have Pika. For the very first time he is seen speaking. And surprisingly, in an uncharacteristically high-pitched voice. And Pika, as well as some of the other officers, have this kind of complex about his high-pitched voice. As this officer is seen here laughing because of Pika's voice. And he is blown away by Baby 5 as a result. Before we move on, Doflamingo does also state that he lost his mother at the age of 8 and he killed his own father at the age of 10. We will find a little bit more about Doflamingo's backstory in the next volume, as well as his connection to Law and even Law's story. Who Law is, where he's come from, what's his story, why he became a pirate, etc. Now going back to the Smile Factory, we see Frankie heading towards it. Right here we see Luffy, who, if you remember, was carrying Zoro and Law. They find themselves in confrontation with Dellinger, Senor Pink, and Macfeist, and other Doflamingo subordinates, the citizens of Dressrosa, the Marines, and even Fujitora, the Admiral. Now we leave them and we go back to Robin and Usopp, along with Rebecca, Hack, Bartholomew, and the Tontata dwarves, they make their way up to the Colosseum stand. At this point, Robin notes that after Pika rearranged Dressrosa, the outer wall, as you see here, the outer wall of the Colosseum has come into contact with the King's Plateau, and that if they simply climb up there, they can meet up with the others. Now moving back to where Luffy, Zoro, and Laura, Pika is finally beginning his assault in a massive giant stone form. Of course, anyone would be scared of this giant form. However, when Pika does speak, Luffy laughs out loud, and this irritates Pika. Chapter 748. Luffy continues to laugh, irritates Pika even more, and Pika raises his fist and slams it into the ground, causing massive destruction to the town. Of course, he was trying to hit Luffy. At this point, we meet up with Cavendish. And although Cavendish does have some resentment towards Luffy and Law, he decides to put that aside, or even forsake his revenge on the Straw Hats. And he even gives Law his hat. Right here at the bottom. Then, Luffy, Zoro and Law join forces with the Colosseum participants, such as Cavendish, Jinjao, Elisabello, even the Fighting Bull, and they all join forces to defeat Doflamingo. As we see here, they just mow down the opposing forces. And they're all going after Doflamingo. What I forget to mention is that one of the reasons they're joining forces with Luffy is because Usopp, who is part of Luffy's crew, did save them by reverting them back into human form. If you remember, the losing participants were turned into toys by Sugar. So by Usopp saving them, he's helped Luffy create this kind of small army to defeat Doflamingo. Of course, they're all kind of angry at Doflamingo themselves, each of them after Doflamingo's head. Anyway, continuing. Pika comes in for another attack, with probably a palm strike or something like that. However, it's destroyed by Jinjao and Elisabello. And that takes us on to chapter 749. So, Luffy, still on board the Fighting Bull, presses on towards the Royal Palace, as we see here, with Abdullah and Jeet, who are just tagging along, kind of barely hanging onto the bull. Yep. Pika comes in for another attack. However, Zoro tells the group not to defend or attack Pika, as it's just a waste of energy, as Pika is not taking any damage. This shows that Zoro has learned the almost inner working of Pika's ability. Luffy and the ball use this opportunity, now that Pika's armor has struck the ground, to actually climb up it or run along it. However, Pika does notice this and prepares to attack them. However, Luffy does strike Pika before he can do so. Now we see this executive officer actually leaving his giant form and coming out in flesh to attack Luffy. However, Luffy does dodge, and here we see the beginning of a rematch between Zoro and Pika. Now Pika's larger stone body has stopped moving, and to the much relief of everyone, really. At this point here we see Law. He's reflecting on his action and his plan, and he does admit that there were some problems, some hiccups or inefficiencies with his initial plan, and he aims to go after Doflamingo's head. And here on this final page of this chapter we hear of Corazon. If you remember in the previous volume, when Law was fighting Doflamingo on the bridge between Dressrosa and Greenbit, Law did mention Corazon and how he was in debt to Corazon for saving his life. Here it's revealed that Corazon is actually Doflamingo's younger brother. Down here in this chapter we find out where everyone is presently on the map. Of course, at the top we have Doflamingo. On this level right here we have McFice, along with Baby 5, Laoji and other officers of Doflamingo's crew. On this level we have Luffy and Law on the fighting bull, and right here on the stone statue we have the battle between Zoro and Pika. And right at the bottom here we have Cavendish, Chinjao and their group aiming for the palace. We also have Fujitora and his men guarding it. We also have Kairos right here. And we see him here in action. Now we move back to the King's Plateau, where Usopp and Robin have managed to meet up with King Riku and Viola. Here we see that Viola has the keys to Law's Kairoseki handcuffs. Rebecca volunteers to deliver the key to Luffy, and Bartholomew decides to join her. Leo and Kabu, as we see here, go with Rebecca. Going back to Frankie at the Smart Factory, he is again engaged in battle with Senor Pink. who claims that Frankie's radical beam would be ineffective against the factory door. However, that doesn't stop Frankie from at least trying, but Senor Pink steps in and redirects Frankie's attack. Luffy, Law, Uzi is the name of the fighting bull. Abdullah and Jeet are currently at the first level of the King's Plateau right here, with the other Colosseum fighters not far on their tail. Right here at the bottom we see the beginning of the confrontation between Fujitora and Sabo. And Sabo is preventing the Marines from going after Luffy and the others. Of course, the Marines don't know of the connection between Sabo and Luffy. But Sabo does mention he wants to protect his brother. Chapter 751. And here, on the front cover, we have a new cover story. In these previous chapters, they were just like just some artwork by Oda, or some requested artwork from fans. But here begins a new cover story of Jinbei going on a journey. Maybe at the end of this journey he meets up with Luffy. We'll just have to wait and see. But anyway. The Marines are no match for Sabo. He defeats most of them before he engages in battle with Fujitora. Here we see the beginning of their fight. Here Luffy and Co are making their way to the palace. As they do, right here we see Kelly and Bobby Funk. They lead, or they direct Luffy and Trafalgar Law, who are on the ball, towards this kind of tunnel that's supposed to be a shortcut to the Sunflower Garden. However, the tunnel actually leads them to a dead end where they are ambushed by Doflamingo. Chapter 752. Doflamingo knocks out Uzi. Abdullah and Jeet rescue Luffy and Law from Doflamingo. However, this Doflamingo turns out to be another string clone. Here we see Kairos arriving at the first level of the New King's Plateau. Okay. Luffy, Law and the allied Colosseums have finally reached the second level of the New King's Plateau. Going back to the King's Plateau, the old King's Plateau, that is. where Robin, Rebecca and Bartholomew and Leo travel to the New King's Plateau with the assistance of beetles, as we see here. And this chapter, actually this volume, ends with a quick flashback of when Law first met with Doflamingo, right here. And that's really it. Okay everyone, thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe.